Aloha, everyone. I want to be respectful of your time, so we're going to get started. As I've tried doing in a couple of different occasions, I'm on site right now. I feel like a reporter. I'm taking my camera everywhere and testing out this cool technology that we've gotten, as a result of the various stimulus packages. But I'm here at our Kipuka Native Hawaiian Center at Pu'uloa. I wanted to take an opportunity to show and tell how wonderful this space is, and to give you a sense of the type of resources that we have available for our students. We've had them available before, but what's really interesting is that I've been here just for under 2 years, and a lot of what we had here in Pearl City was under renovation, including at Waianae actually. And over the course of the pandemic, when we kind of all started working remotely, we got a lot of the construction kind of taken care of. And so we have this space here, and right behind me is the Ohia Gardens. I'm looking at Kumumomi because I asked her for a lot of this information, and I could look in her expressions when I say something that's not likely appropriate. But this is really a wonderful space, a space for our students to engage with our faculty and staff in just really getting the supports necessary for our students to really be motivated. And so I wanted to show and tell a little bit because this is actually some pretty cool space. So behind me, we have our gardens, right? And then these sliding doors that open up right into the gardens. And so there's a similar space actually in the back of this building that I've shared with Momi that I would eventually want to make into my office because it's such a cool space. But as we start looking around the space over here where our students can work together with our faculty and our staff, in getting their academic plans together and maybe just a space to congregate, not during COVID, and just take any resources available. This wall here is actually a partition. And this is especially for those of you that haven't seen the space since the renovation, but this is a partition that leads into a space that's about the same size as this space here. And I believe that the next space over is a quiet study space, whereas here we could do a little bit more noise, which is why I'm here, being loud, and grateful that there are no students right now that I'm interrupting. But what's really cool about these walls, which I learned just a few minutes ago, is that they're whiteboards and you could write on them. And so again, just purposeful space for our students to take advantage of everything that we have available. And it couldn't have come at a better time, because now we're looking for all of these spaces for our students to be more socially distant, and we have this space available for our students. And so I wanted to show and tell, and I'm really trying every now and then to open up the doors to a new space or resource that I haven't really shared or that you may not have seen during this pandemic period. And just as a thought and forward thinking, as we're seeing our students potentially struggle, we know that we have these spaces and we know that we have these resources available. And so we do have a couple of different programs that are housed here. And if you come through here, I kind of feel that most of the spaces that have been renovated, I don't know if they existed this way before or maybe by design, they're this way, but it's kind of like a labyrinth. And so I go through one door and then I have to go out the door and exit and come in through another one, maybe to hit Momi's office. And then I go through other hallways and I find like PK's office, and it's like all over the place. But we have classrooms, we have counselors, we have faculty, all under this one space. And I think that that's really critical, especially as we look forward to the future. And so again, just a little bit of show and tell before I actually get into our typical updates. And so I'll continue doing this because I'm just really proud of what we have, and I want us to continue taking advantage of what we have. And so I learned about 2 months ago, I want to say, that Momi found out that I was using this type of camera to do my Zooms. And so she decided to ask for one too for her conference room. And so when I learned of that, I said, you know what, maybe I'll host one of my Zoom sessions from here too, paying it forward. And so really proud. And again, it's an opportunity to showcase not just our spaces, but the technology and our capacity. I could actually, if I wanted to, and if by design there was a connecting door that way, I could have taken you through this entire building, but that door doesn't really open as effectively. But I'm totally wireless right now and really happy to be using the technology. We've been going through a lot in recent months, a lot of conversations about where UH is going to be in fiscal year 22 and beyond. And it's been a roller coaster. It's been a roller coaster because it's affected many of us in many different ways, personally, professionally. And our students have been going through quite a lot of ordeals. And so, I kind of, in retrospect, I think back and I would think that I would not want to be a student during these times. And so when we keep that in mind, we kind of get a sense of what they're going through. And then so we have to reflect on ourselves. And if there's something that I like to make for wherever I work, it's not only an amazing environment for our students, but also an amazing environment for us as employees. And that's one of the things that I think is distinguishing of Leeward, is that our culture as employees is really good compared to almost anywhere else I've seen, actually every place else that I've seen. So this is the absolute best place because of the people. And so we want to maintain that good mojo of energies as we work together and we move forward. And with that is a positive approach and an optimistic view. Over the last couple of months, choppy, but it's looking really positive as we continue to move forward. I can't really deliver much by way of major budgetary updates because the state's still figuring that out. But at the very least, we are in a much better place in April than we were at the end of December, where we were contemplating, furloughs, right? And so this is as a result of a lot that has been happening. Much of the stimulus packages that have come through, but you've also heard, and there's positives and negatives, our economy is bouncing a little bit faster than we had anticipated, even that of our local economy with tourism. I'm sure that if you walk through any of the tourist sites or you're looking at our traffic patterns, it's getting pretty dense. And so with that, it does allow for a little bit of optimism and forward looking. The Council on Revenues, every time they meet, they come up with a better projection to the one that they had previously calculated. And the stimulus packages have come in such that the state can backfill some of the gaps that we had over the last year with our loss of tourism and additional expenses as a result of the pandemic. But higher education too has seen better days, right? Or is seeing better days because the current administration is infusing a lot of funding to higher education. And what I really appreciate is this forward thinking in that the community colleges are the place to invest. And so the community colleges are seeing more money than they have in the past because we're no longer looking at simple FTE equivalents on the student side, right? Because a lot of the community colleges struggle. When someone commits to a 4-year program, they're very likely committing to 4-year in a full-time capacity. Community colleges are upside down. The vast majority of our students are part-time. And so if we look at the FTE side of things, we are always going to be at a disadvantage. The current administration is shifting things and we're being a little bit more nimble. And so we've received quite a bit of dollars to help us cope with the pandemic. And so that's where I wanted to more or less guide us as we move forward. Now, when we sent out the invitation to this meeting, as always at the very bottom, there's a link to where folks can submit questions ahead of time. And I did receive one. And I wanted to make note of it. The question that came in: what is the fate of lecturers, especially for Leeward, as it relates to the current budgetary situation? And what I have to say is that, and you all feel this, while we've been living through this hire freeze, it's been very difficult or impossible to fill any of our vacancies, which have been growing. Right? And so with that, lecturers are a higher need, in my opinion, but a lot of this is going to be highly dependent on our enrollment. And so if our enrollment declines, our need for lecturers might decline as well. And it's very specific to disciplines. And so I think that the budgetary situation may be looking a little bit better than it has in recent past, but the lecturer needs are going to be highly dependent on our overall student enrollment. And I'll touch on that in a little bit. But again, our budget's starting to look a little bit better. It's just really difficult to manage an institution of our size when the state's releasing only a quarter of our budget at a time. And so we haven't gotten our fourth quarter out yet. And so it's very difficult to make decisions and move, plan it out in that capacity. What I'm going to do next, I'm going to share a couple of slides because I think that in the past, when I've shared some of these numbers, it's really difficult to capture that number and keep it in your mind as I'm having my conversation. So I just wanted to share with you primarily our stimulus dollars that we've received. And so I'm just going to ask for anyone to just tell me that you could see my slides in presentation mode. Anyone?
It's ready. It's presentation mode.
Awesome. Thank you. And so I have prepared some slides of information that is a given. Okay, I have shared in the past that there's still more money that we're projecting to receive. But for now, I wanted to share a little bit of what we have for sure now and how we've made use of some of this funding so that you get a little bit of an idea on the way that we've been using that stimulus money. So just to give you an idea, we've received 3 major buckets of funding, you guys. So we've had our student aid, which has added up so far to $2.067 million, of which we've already awarded about half. So we still have about $1 million available to share to our students. When I say student aid, the federal government has required that this portion of funding go directly to students. Now, I've shared in a couple of meetings that it is a little bit difficult to get students to get this money because they have to be eligible. They have to raise their hand. They have to suggest that they've had some type of pandemic-related expense, and then they would just receive the money. But there are a lot of unknowns to the students. They don't know whether they have to pay this money back, and they do not. They don't know the different impacts that this may have on future financial aid. And so where we have these questions, it's just really powerful to connect them with the right resource so that we do get the students that need this money to get the money. I will say that we've gotten other buckets of funding, which I'll share with you in just a second. From the other sources of funding, we are in a capacity to award money to students. And so long story short, we had initially received only $1 million for direct student aid. We completely depleted that bucket and started awarding more student aid from our other buckets. And so the next bucket is the institutional portion. And to date, we have received $4.8 million. Now, this $4.8 million is intended to help support our operations as it related to additional expenses because of the pandemic. We've spent only about $1.23 or $1.3 million, and I'll share a little bit more on that. So we still have about $3.5 million available from this bucket. Next, we got our minority serving institutions portion of the funding, and that's so far added to $5.3 million. We still have $3.74 million available from this bucket. It's important to mention that the institutional portion is highly restricted, and it's intended, again, to address needs like, plexiglass, right? On the minority serving institution funding, we could be a little bit more creative in finding ways of supporting our students, right? And so, but we've also used some of our minority serving institution monies to award more student aid, to supplement the initial student aid allotment that we got. So far in our bank accounts, we've received a little over $12 million in stimulus dollars, of which we have at least $8 million still left. So we've done quite well over the course of practically a little over a year, doing the balancing act with the pandemic and its impacts. We still have some funding that we have available to address some needs, and I wanted to go around in just a little bit to talk about some of the creative ways in which we found to support our students and our operations during these times. But in addition to that, I just want to give us forewarning that we are projecting to receive at least another $4 million that's supposed to go directly to student aid, and an additional $4 million for institutional support, and very likely to receive more than that. And so we want to plan this out and do really well in continuing to support not only the students that are currently impacted by the pandemic, but we have to reason that a lot of the students, especially coming out of the DOE, they've had a very different 11th and 12th grade. And they're going to be our next wave of students. And so we need to prepare for that, while also recognizing that over the summer, fall, and spring that we have coming up, we're going to be revamping more of our campus operations. And so that's going to need more resources. And so I wanted to share sample expenses. As I mentioned before, to date, and I say to date, and this is probably 2 weeks old, but close enough, we've awarded about $1.4 million in direct student aid. We've also spent quite a bit of money of our institutional portion on things like laptops for students, PPE for campus safety, professional development to get us going with online learning, Wi-Fi access improvements. And so some of these we would have typically done, but we are now really in an opportunity where we have some funding that otherwise we haven't had, right? And so we've been taking advantage of that to resource out some of the things that we've been hearing through the grapevines that students are struggling with. For our minority serving funding, we've spent so far about $1.5 million, which included some more direct student aid, more of the PPE. We've looked at some lost revenue, like for instance, student fees, and then also more on the Wi-Fi access improvements. And so what's interesting is that when we look at the type of costs associated with where we've been spending to help mitigate some of the pandemic issues, some of the technological stuff is just really expensive, right? So to get Wi-Fi into a parking lot is pretty pricey. It's not as simple as adding an additional router, right? And so that's where we've been spending a lot of our funding. And so if you look at general categories of where we've spent our monies, the good news is that the bulk of our monies is going into direct student aid, okay? And so we've had other big categories like campus safety, so PPE. We've done some lost revenue, training, upgrades into our technologies. And so it's difficult to see where we are investing in some of these areas, and some of us may still be working remotely, or maybe not taking advantage of some of these resources. They may not even be felt, but they're kind of there. And so what I wanted to do is take a couple of minutes to just go around with some of the folks that have been implementing some of these investments, or working with divisions and units and getting some of these, to share a little bit more on how we've been taking advantage of this. And so what I want to do is punt it over first to Leanne to share a little bit of what we've done in her area with some of our CARES funding.
Thanks, Carlos. You're the best advertisement for the use of technology that we purchased on CARES, because you're using all of the technology. It was all purchased on CARES, so thanks for advertising it so well. But that's a good example of what instructors are going to be able to do in the fall when they come back, because they will be using that technology to teach and reach the students. So thanks for the ad. Okay, so for the area that I've seen, we've seen about 2.2 million, and this is not all of the technology spending. This is just what I've been aware of. And so I just wanted to go over it briefly, that our campus really has benefited, as Carlos said, from this CARES funding, because it's allowed us to spend in technology that really affects everyone, from students to faculty, staff, and so on. And so it kind of falls into these 4 general buckets of spending. The first being in instruction. So you hopefully have seen the opportunity to put in a CARES proposal. And so now we're having that done on a monthly basis, where instructional areas can put in for, or actually the whole campus can put in for CARES spending. But this particular bucket, what we're finding is a lot of it is concentrated naturally, in areas that were very heavy with in-person instruction, the culinary, automotive, science labs. And so they put in CARES proposals to help their students to move to more of a hybrid or online environment. And so some of the things that have come out of it result directly in technology that supports these areas. Virtual labs, for example, audiovisual equipment that supports the teaching in those areas. So that is, and these are just very rough numbers, is about $350,000. The next bucket, which is the biggest bucket, is computers. So we've purchased about 450 laptops. A lot of them are for student checkout, and they also are for faculty and support areas. So in the past, the previous IT coordinators and deans before me, they put into place a process where instructional faculty could replace their computers on a rotating basis. But there really wasn't anything for the rest of the campus. And so we found that we had to buy laptops to support the areas that didn't have. And also, I know that there was initially when we went into telework, everybody wanted laptops. And the reason that we couldn't buy everybody a new laptop was that in 5 years, we're all going to need new laptops and we're not going to be able to do that. So we are being purposeful in trying to have a replacement cycle so that as computers get old, we're replacing the oldest first and then continuing on, so that we're trying to have a process where things are replaced on a routine basis. And then the next group of the next bucket is our classroom technology. And this goes similar to what the computers were, is a lot of times what we did in the past with our, like smart classrooms is a really good example, is that we have a one-time purchase of technology. And we don't really have a plan for replacing it because we don't have the money to support that replacement. So what CARES allowed us to do is to be a little more strategic and to think about how are we going to maintain this in the future. And so thanks to the work of the Media Center IT and the Technology Working Group, that group that started back in the summer, they came up with a plan so that what used to be smart classrooms, so we have about 80 or so smart classrooms that we knew we weren't going to be able to maintain. And so with this CARES money, we're going to have tech rooms or technology enhanced rooms. The division chairs are partnering, and they're going to identify 50 of the most used rooms. And those are going to be identified as tech rooms that can use the hybrid kits. And so the hybrid kits are what Carlos is demonstrating. So people can teach hybrid, so they'll have a remote audience as well as an in-person audience. They have technology that will allow interactivity. So that's what this big infusion of $650,000 will do, is to bring 50 rooms up to a certain level so that we can start to replace equipment on a more routine basis in a planned manner. And then the fourth bucket is what a lot of you probably never think about. It's all of the equipment that's in the closets and it's invisible to us, the wireless. And we have come to depend on the wireless so much. We have so many devices on it. And so the CARES funding has allowed us to boost our wireless access, both indoors and outdoors, especially outdoors. And then the stuff that's in the closets that have continued to age, Lionel and Byron have done a really good job of extending the life of something that should only be 5 years to like maybe 10 or 12 years. And so now we're able to enhance the infrastructure of that. And then the last piece, which I didn't include a price on, is we are going to be hiring staff to help us to put all this technology in. So it'll be a 1-year CARES funded staff people. That's it.
Thank you, Leanne. Technology just failed me for a second there trying to unmute myself. I want to give a little bit of a chance for Cami also to share a little bit on how CARES funding has gone through her area. So Cami?
Thanks, Carlos. So obviously, the biggest way that Student Services has been interacting with CARES funding to date is the direct aid to students. So we are, as Carlos mentioned, we have had several cycles of aid going out to students, one back in spring 2020, and then 2 additional rounds in early fall 2020. We are in our next round of student aids. And we have a really hard working committee going through all of the applications of our students. And so thank you to Pearl Nakagawa, Sarita Washington, and Lexer Chow for working on this weekly, and Patty Umetsu for helping us to actually disperse the funds. We have awarded about 450 students in this third round, or in this round of CARES funding, and have given out about $432,000, a little more than $432,000 to those students. Students could get up to $1,000 in aid this go around. We are looking forward to the next round, which we still are working with the other campuses to define how we're going to get that money out. But the next round of funding that's going to be available to students will be a little bit more expansive. So we will be able to give students who didn't qualify for money this time around. So students who are in completely online programs, for example, students who are in non-credit programs, for example, all of those students are eligible for this round of funding. However, students have to have an exceptional need. So we are working still with the other campuses to determine how that awarding process is going to go and how we're going to define the criteria and things like that. So more to come on that. Our areas have also utilized CARES to provide services online though. So direct student aid was one thing, but we're also utilizing CARES money to purchase some online systems. We purchased our online NSO platform with CARES money because we couldn't do in-person NSO anymore due to COVID. So we had to still help students get oriented to campus life and their experience. And so we did purchase that. We also purchased a texting platform called Signalvine, and we're in the midst of rolling that out. So there is now two-way texting available with students, and our recruitment office is currently working on the first iteration of rollout for that. So we are now able to follow up with students via text and nudge them to take the next step in our onboarding process through Signalvine. There's also a number of things that the UHCC system has invested in to help financial aid do their work more efficiently, to give them more tools to be able to do their awarding. And so that we're in the midst of implementing those things as well. So those are the few ways that CARES has really been used to help us in our work.
Thank you, Cami. And you know, I want to take a pause here for a second just to acknowledge how difficult it has been to process out almost any and all of the CARES expenses and eligibility and implementing all of this. So like Cami and Leanne have suggested, there have been a lot of groups coming together to trying to figure out how to best manage the process. But you know, from our business office and our grant management side, I mean, it is constant, you know, communication and working through all of this because it's not a free for all. And a lot of these requests and expenditures need to fit within a really tiny box. And so, you know, I want to recognize everyone that's been really working toward that. And so what I want to share now is, you know, an opportunity for Ron to share how, CARES has impacted the academic side, especially on the CTE side of the house.
Yeah, thanks, Carlos. As you know, not all of our CTE programs can be easily taught online because they have many hands-on competencies, like in our culinary arts, automotive, agricultural programs. And as you know, that in spring and fall of last year, all of our students were limited as far as coming to campus, and particularly our culinary students was not able to come to the labs to actually do some hands-on cooking and baking. So our instructors, like many of you, taught online synchronously, but still the students had to learn the hands-on competencies. So the instructors were creative to create these food baskets for the students to take home and practice. But some of the students lacked the necessary equipment like pots and pans and baking utensils. So with the CARES money, we were able to purchase these type of equipment for our students to take home and use. Consequently, our dining room students, lacked the necessary tableware, cup saucers, napkins, etc. So the CARES money was able to provide that necessary equipment for our students. And this spring semester, we were able to bring in more of our culinary students for the hands-on. But in order to reduce the number of students sharing equipment or supplies, we've had to purchase more equipment, pots, pans, utensils, so that students wouldn't necessarily have to share, the equipment. And for our dining room students, we will be buying service carts so that they don't need to share, these carts, and would be easily, sanitized with individual type of equipment. As far as our automotive students are concerned, again, very hands-on type of program. And to provide the social distancing in the automotive labs, we were able to purchase laptops, diagnostic scanners, software for the web-based type of learning. And we also were able to purchase these vehicle lifts, mainly because in the past, we've had to have like 3 or 4 to 5 students around each of the lifts. And again, to reduce the number of students around each of these equipment, we've needed to upgrade and purchase additional equipment. So CARES money was used to purchase, mainly for health and safety reasons, 9 vehicle lifts and all these laptops and scanners for our automotive program. So very fortunate to have those type of funds for our CTE programs. Thanks, Carlos.
Thanks, Ron. And just as a quick reminder, you guys, the reason that we're going through this is because it allows us all to brainstorm and be creative about ways in which we could influence our instruction and the success of our students. We still have CARES funding, and so it's, an ideal moment for us to think and how others have made use of it. Jim, can you share a little bit on how your side of the house has taken advantage of CARES?
Yes, thanks, Carlos. I really congratulate the Arts and Sciences faculty for being able to put so many courses online. There were some courses that weren't able to do so well with that, but luckily the CARES funds were able to pay for things like electronic keyboards, ukuleles for some of the performance music classes, and science lab kits and telescopes. So that allowed a lot of our students to be able to borrow these objects and participate in class where otherwise they wouldn't be able to do that. That's it.
Thanks, Jim. It just takes me a little while because my microphone button disappears from my screen. And so, yeah, so we've had quite a bit of opportunities to really invest, and I think it's increasing our capacity to support our students during a pandemic. But then in looking ahead, a lot of these resources are going to help us out in what could be the new norm moving forward. We have other areas too, and I'd like to give Kay an opportunity to share a little bit of how we've pivoted and maybe some other announcements.
Thanks, Carlos. Hi, everybody. I want to just talk about the CARES funding that we also funded a lot of virtual software for automotive, for health information technology, and anatomy and physiology. And this was an opportunity to try something new that they could use in their distance ed classes. And we couldn't have done that without CARES. So thank you for all your creative ideas. Keep on bringing them in, because this is our opportunity, especially with our IT support. I really thank Leanne for taking the lead with our IT group, EMC, so that we will have the proper technology that we could not afford just on our regular budget. So CARES has been able to catapult us into some really great areas of providing the technology needed. So a couple things I want to share with you is also I sent out a couple messages about the Sessy survey, about our student engagement survey, and Friday was the deadline. You don't have to suffer any more emails from me pleading for you to please, contact your students. But we did get up to an overall percentage of 35%. And although that was far from my 50 or 85%, I heard that's a really good number for online surveys. So thank you for pushing that. TV Pro, man, you came out with 69%, IIT with 60%. And I'll send this out in 3 areas in the 50%, automotive, special ed, and our health information technology. But what really was impressive is that the liberal arts classes, you came up with 36% surveys. So thank you to all our faculty for helping push that survey, which is such an important piece of evidence as we look at our accreditation reports and as we write grants. So thank you. As you know, we sent out a call for sabbaticals, and we had some applications, and we are really pleased to be able to support 3 one semester sabbaticals for this coming academic year. So congratulations to Betty Ikes, Evelyn Wong, and Carlene Yokotake. So we look forward to hearing what you finalize. We had some OER that they will be doing some peer reviews and be able to help plan and help future classes and colleagues. We also have Evelyn looking at QuickBooks and certification. So be thinking of a sabbatical you might want to take in the near future. Our institutional priorities were shared at campus councils. I'm actually cleaning it a little bit better, and I'll be sending that out to the campus this afternoon. So please make sure that you look it over. We sort of did it different this year because we do have CARES funding available. And so with some of the requests, we suggested that they go ahead and apply for CARES. Something that's really, really, really exciting that I loved sharing with you today. And I know this campus has been waiting and waiting for this. We are very hopeful that in the near future, we will have a total redesign of our website. We will make sure it is accessible and hits all those ADA earmarks that we have to follow. But I really would like to thank, we met with Byron, Willie Castillos, Randy Araki, who helped, and Stella Yamamoto, but especially Tad, who is really, helping us with our marketing efforts, and Leanne, our interim dean of academic services. We put out an RFP. We had a number of bidders, and we selected one. It's now being sent up for approval through the chain of command, and we're hoping to get that back soon so we can award the vendor. And once we go through the system, which does take a long time for approval sometimes, we're hoping to be able to bring the vendor on campus and through Zoom to do some focus groups. And as soon as we are given the okay, we are going to be contacting everybody, because we want you to be part of how this new website, how we are going to brand Leeward Community College in the future is just so exciting. So start thinking about what you like seeing in websites and be prepared to participate. So that's it for me. Thanks, Carlos.
Thanks, Gay, and congratulations to our sabbatical folks. This is a pretty big achievement, and I'm really happy that we're able to do this even during these times. But I think that this is a good indication that we're starting to move forward, right? We're not gonna stick to this pandemic and just dwell on it. We're beginning to make our steps forward. With that, Lori Lay and her area, there are a lot of things that we clock in expense-wise through there. I will share that some of the things don't look like big numbers in our CARES expenses because we had found other opportunities to spend. I'll let Lori Lay share a little bit there, but it's the stuff that we see everywhere in all of our offices with plexiglass and whatnot, but we've spent quite a bit of money there. Lori Lay?
Thanks, Carlos. Okay, so for our side of the house, as Carlos said, you see a lot of little things in your offices and classrooms, such as hand sanitizers, the sanitizing wipes. We have masks, disposable masks. We have the disinfectant that our janitors use, paper towels, gloves, plexiglass, and I think just about every office and classroom, mostly the offices, have plexiglass. We've also purchased touchless soap dispensers and touchless paper towel dispensers. So as of right now, we have at least one of each in all restrooms. More are ordered and will be installed during the summer and as they arrive. We also have purchased new cones, safety cones, those orange cones that you see in the parking lot. So we've replaced some of those. For the hand sanitizers, we also have the standalone devices. So in certain offices or areas, you'll see those stands with the hand sanitizers. Campus announcements. We will continue the vaccinations until May 13th, Tuesday through Fridays. And this is part of the Department of Health, along with emergency management, in sponsoring this on our campus. That's it for my area.
Thanks for that, Lori Lay. And again, it's a lot of folks that have been working together to getting all of this for us. And so we don't, I notice it often, but we don't see the work that it takes to get through all of that and ordering. And I still recall a time where we were ordering a lot because we're swearing that we'll have shortages in some of these areas. And so it's just a lot that we've lived through, but we're wanting to move forward, right? And so with moving forward, the college is going to begin engaging in strategic planning. We're going to begin engaging and preparing for our next ACC-JC report. And so we have opportunities now to use some of the resources from the federal government to help catapult us into the next normal. And so with that, I'm going to start to pivot a little bit in conversation to enrollment for just a little bit and then open it up to questions. I know we've taken quite a bit of time, but I think that it's empowering to see all of the things that we've been doing, even though it seems like, we don't have that much action on the campuses. Oops. Some things. All right, here we go. So I wanted to share a little bit of our enrollment just so that we all get a glimpse of what's going on. If you look at year over year from fall 2016 through 21, year to date, we've received a significantly fewer number of applications. Now we could suggest many reasons why this is happening. In part, it is because we have a new application, and the new application has its quirks. And it also is a unified application for all of the CCs. And so, there are some concerns there. I am hopeful that it is all a matter of the different application and not that we're really seeing a lot fewer students interested in us, but that maybe we had some duplication before that, we've kind of cleaned up. And or that we had students that were applying that weren't truly interested, right? And so they were just inflating our numbers and not showing up. And there's evidence to suggest that that may be the case. But I wanted to just bring this up and share with you because as I've been saying all along, one of the health indicators for colleges is that of enrollment. And so when we're looking for what impact we'll have as it relates to continuing conversations on fiscal year 22 and beyond, and impact on lecturers and whatnot, enrollment is that big indicator. And so what's interesting is that looking at our first-time freshmen direct from high school, we're seeing that we're at about 50% of where we were last year. And so again, the overall application numbers do look significantly smaller, but especially so for the community colleges. And so the community colleges seem to be taking a bit of a hit. I would argue too that being here on Oahu, we are seeing a bigger decline in applications than our neighbor island counterparts. And it may very well be, and I've said this before, the pandemic has allowed a lot of four-year institutions, including UH, but everywhere else, to work creatively on application deadlines as well as admissions requirements. And so they're kind of creeping into our space. And so that may be happening too. A lot of students are seeing more of an opportunity to go to a four-year school than they have in the past. But on the flip side, the good news is that from application to actual enrolled students, for the current semester, you all know that we're flat compared to last year. And what's nice to see is that looking ahead into our fall semester, we're still looking a little bit ahead in registrations. Now, it's a little bit early. We don't want to celebrate anything, right? We also see that some of our other counterparts are seeing pretty significant increase in their registrations. But again, it's because we're still pretty early. I'm hopeful that as we get closer and closer to the actual start of the summer and the fall, that we actually stay flat or improve in enrollment. And again, it's just a narrative of continuing to offer what we're doing and continuing to support students that I do think would benefit from an education and would benefit from coming to Leeward. And so I think it was, I don't know who it was, I think it might have been Betty that put a question on what are we doing differently, maybe for recruitment purposes. And so there are quite a few tactics. I will share that, Cammie's team has been very creative and resourceful in outreach to students in ways that we haven't in the past, as she suggested, with Signal Vine and whatnot. We're going into, chasing after students through text messages and cold calls and following up and trying to put them through the process. But there is the one gap, of course, that is just the overall number of applicants or prospects that we seem to be low on. We have some opportunities for marketing and working with our DOE partners, but it is really difficult because I think that we are all so stretched, and so are our counterparts at the high schools and in the community agencies, that it's just really difficult to commit everyone to it. But we are trying to build out and do more outreach so that we could capture more of our students. I hope that you guys have been seeing that through our communication channels, our stories, our social media. We've been a lot more active recently than we have in years past. And this all will have a ripple effect. It's just a matter of waiting it out a little bit. But I am worried overall, generally, about enrollment, and I wanted to share that with you guys so that you could see where we stand on a year-over-year situation. And with that, I just want to pause now and give you guys at least an opportunity to ask us questions if you have any. I can't really see well the chat unless I come very close to maybe the camera. But I'll let you guys type in any questions or comments or anything that you might want us to address. Any questions? Wow, we got you all tired. I know it's that time of the semester. I realize that it's kind of tough, but it's important to keep everyone engaged and everyone in the know of what's going on. Again, I just want to take a moment to pitch that, we are looking ahead, and if there are any opportunities where we may be able to leverage CARES, as Kay suggested earlier in our prioritization process, we know that on our hard budget general fund dollars, it'll be very difficult to make decisions, more or less like this last year, we were on stasis. We didn't know what we were doing, so we were very hesitant. We're still tightening our belts because we don't know long-term impacts on the state budget. But what I can say is that because we have some of the CARES funding, there may be some of those priorities that we earmark for a year, or that we try to fund the one-time dollars through CARES. And so there'll be some capacity there, but still work within your units and your divisions if there are things that you could see benefiting us. We've been very active on the grant side of the house. We want to submit for, we need to diversify our funding and strengthen what we do for our students. So there's quite a bit that's going on.
Carlos, there's a question under concerning fall classes.
Oh, hold on.
For face-to-face classes this fall, what's the vaccination requirement for participation in those classes?
Yeah, as of right now, we do not have a vaccination requirement. We are still following CDC guidelines. I think that you're all probably in the know that as of today, we are still in a 6-foot distancing for any face-to-face classes, but there is a move because of, again, CDC guidelines and what other education partners are doing, that it may reduce to about 3-foot social distancing. I don't know where UH is gonna land, but we're hopeful that in the next couple of weeks and hopefully before the end of the semester, we have a better picture of what this will look like for the fall. But that's kind of where we are. So no requirement on the vaccination. We are encouraging it. And that's why we lent the side here at Leeward to try to get more people going. And I think that later, is it this week or maybe next week, it'll open up to anyone that's over 16. And so, we've capitalized quite a bit, and many of our folks went through it. So, but yeah, to answer that question, we don't have a vaccination requirement.
Okay, here's another one that I'm reading. Has there been student surveys about the different class modalities?
So we've had some surveys, although I can't date them. I can't remember if it's this semester or last semester, but there was one that was pushed out by UHCC, and we did get some feedback on that. I don't know that we've had a more recent one, but we've engaged a lot with the students as through student government and through other open forums with students where we've gotten some feedback, and we've circulated that with our division chairs, and we've circulated some of that with faculty senate. But I don't know if anyone else can bail me out on this, if we've had any more recent surveys on this. What I can tell you is that Sessy has a portion, right, where students are reflecting on their current experience. And so when that data comes in, it'll be very valuable as we work through the different modalities. But that's fresh. I think it closed yesterday, today, yeah.
The 9th.
Tonight? Okay. So that's the closest that the Sessy survey. And again, we do that with some level of frequency so that we could compare over a set period of time on how we're doing in that satisfaction survey. But this year, there were some questions that were specific to the pandemic, so that we could be responsive.
Follow-up question, can those surveys be shared with the campus at large?
I don't, do you mean the questions or the outcomes?
The outcomes.
Yeah, so we'll find a way, yeah, of sharing that with the campus, and typically we'll link them somewhere, but I think that there's a major motivation for us to play with the data, analyze it, and make some moves as a result of it. So yes.
Yeah, Carlos, this question actually is from the AIS committee, Faculty Senate's AIS committee. And it's something that we're talking to Laurie about, but this has to do with the air filtration system. in our classrooms. There are some concerns from faculty that, based on what they know about the air filtration system, this will impact their decision to teach face-to-face or not. So since you have a lot of audience right now, this might be a good time to address that.
So, I mean, and maybe Lori Lake can bail me out on this one too. We've gone through some iterations of reviewing what we could do with HVAC as a result of this. And, there is some evidence suggesting that some new technology could address some of the, the viral particles and whatnot, but there's just the same amount of evidence, if not more, that suggests that there isn't enough that any different air circulation process would prevent, and so that we should continue trying to do more of opening our doors and windows and whatnot. But we are not, my understanding, we are not as a system really doing much by way of shifting ventilation systems, but continuing to promote social distance and whenever possible, keep doors open. That's the extent. We've evaluated this, and it was actually part of very early conversations, but it never really got to the point where the evidence of improved equipment would address the immediate needs. So it's trying to maintain ventilation as much as we can with like outdoorsy stuff.
Yeah, the faculty committee during the summer did ask for that information. And Grant actually had a report on it, but it was quite technical. So I don't know where that report lives, but maybe if that can be shared with the campus, and they can take from it what they can. But it is quite technical. But what I want to say is there is a report that shows the kind of system that we have right now.
Yes, it's actually on the web, posted as part of our returning to campus, and lists the buildings and what type of system we have. It also lists some of the buildings that have UV lights installed. We are working with the system to see if we can finish installing some of our other, providing these systems in other AC units in the remaining buildings that we have. We're not sure if the project can be covered with CARES funding, but the system is looking at not only our campus, but on all the campuses.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so I'll work with Lori Lay a little bit on this to see what we could dig up any further. But I will say, and I think that Candy just puts a comment there about some spaces. Yeah, we know that some spaces are not as flexible for the sake of social distancing and ventilating it with ambient air. And so that's why, as we continue to move forward, the fall would still be, a transitional semester, more or less, where we'll see a little bit more face-to-face, but not a whole lot more. And then for the spring, by then, we hope to have more robust mechanisms of addressing this. Hopefully by then we have what I think it's called that, community immunity of sorts, where, a vast majority are vaccinated. So we have a little bit more, flexibility and less concerns of the viral transmission and hospitalization rates. And so that's what we're kind of navigating toward. Yeah, Christina, I don't have an update on that. I know that UH is looking at that. I think it's the state too. The state as a whole is looking at telework and how that may work. But for now, we're still on status quo. And so we're hoping to get more information so that could be shared in the near future. Anything else, you guys? I know I've already stepped over time, and I know that some of us may have classes or other things. So, we'll continue having these meetings, you guys. As you probably are aware, things that were changing very rapidly aren't changing as rapidly, and so the reports are a little bit more redundant. And I don't want to take on too much of your time for these redundant reports, but I do want to encourage all of us to start looking forward, to start looking at what the future is going to bring for us and how we can prepare for it, because our students need that. And I think that looking at a glass half full is going to help our students really move forward, and also us as a community. Boy, I can't wait until I see a lot of us back on campus and that we could be a little bit more normal again. But with that, again, if you guys have any questions, there's always a way through, your units and your divisions. But if they need to get to me to some capacity, I welcome them. But for now, I want to just, again, thank you all for everything that you've been doing. It's been, an interesting year to say the least, but we've done quite well. And I think that we could do, we could continue improving in different ways. So thank you guys.